Hello everyone, I am Pankaj and today I am going to tell you about a very beautiful and interesting story. Do you know something about this story? This is a very special story. And why am I saying this? I am saying this because this is the story of the childhood of the writer Ruskin Bond. But before starting the story, may I ask a question? Have you heard about Ruskin Bond? Yes, I'm sure most of you must have heard about Ruskin Bond because he has been India's famous storytellers. In fact, I would say most loving storytellers. And do you know something special about him? He has spent most of his time in India, in Dehradun. So here is the story, Be Prepared, which is the written by Ruskin Bond himself. And this is the story of his own childhood. But before starting the story, let me tell you something in brief about Ruskin Bond and his life. Ruskin Bond is one of India's best loved storytellers. He has spent most of his life in Dehradun and loves writing about the hills, his childhood, and the different animals he has known. Some of his most popular works are The Room on the Roof and Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra. He now lives in Lander, Missouri. So, he has written many stories and he has spent most of his times in Dehradun. So, his stories include the situations and the incidents of Dehradun. Most of the stories, when you read, then you will find that he has written most of the stories about the hills and the surroundings. Now let's start the story. Be prepared. That is the Boy Scout motto, but I never seem to be well prepared for anything, be it an exam or a journey. So, how did I survive as a Boy Scout? Here, the writer Ruskin Bond says that he was the Boy Scout, and the motto of the Scout was Be prepared. But he was never ready, he was never prepared for anything, whether it was an examination or a journey. But the question is, then how could he survive as a Boy Scout? Let's see. This is an interesting incident what happened about him. It seems a rumor had gone around the junior school that I was a good cook. I had never cooked anything in my life, but I had spent a lot of time in the tuck shop. Here the tuck shop means a shop inside a school that sells sweets, snacks and soft drinks. Making suggestions to an encouraging chimpu, the tuck shop owner, to make more and better samosas, jalebis, tikkis and pakoras. With this qualification, I won a cookery badge and was put in charge of our Boy Scout troop's supply of rations. So here the writer says that this was just a rumor. Rumor means something that is said about a person or thing which is usually not true. So a rumor was spread everywhere that he was a good cook. But the reality was he had actually never cooked anything in his life. He was only encouraging Chimpu. He was the tuck shop owner and he used to encourage him for making better samosas, jalebis and such things. There were about 20 of us in our troop. During the summer break, our scout master Mr. Oliver took us on a camping expedition to a mountain. Here they were going to a troop, and this is the story what he is sharing about an expedition to a mountain during the summer break. All the students were very happy because during the summer break they were going to an expedition to a mountain, and the whole troop means the group of 20 boys were going there. A few miles outside Shimla, the first night we were put to work, peeling potatoes, skinning onions, shelling peas, and pounding masalas. When the ingredients were ready, I was asked what should be done with them. Now everybody was busy in making the food, and when all the ingredients were ready, then Bond was asked what should be done now because, according to the rumor, he was a very good cook, which was actually not true. Now, what happened? He said, "Put everything in that big dekchi." I ordered. Pour half a tin of ghee over the lot, add some nettle leaves, and cook for half an hour. When this was done, everyone had a taste and agreed that the dish lacked something. More salt, I suggested. But even after mixing more salt, but the dish still lacked something. Add a cup of sugar, I ordered, and a bottle of tomato sauce. The dish was a great success. Even Mr. Oliver, who was the scout master, who had no idea what had gone into it, enjoyed it. Means whatever was mixed, the food was really delicious. "What is this called?" he asked. Mr. Oliver, the scoutmaster, asked Bond that what is this called? "The Bond Bhujia," said one of the boys. I had earned my cookery badge, and this way he earned a cookery badge. And the rumor became a bit true that he could cook something. The next day, it was very interesting and very exciting. Mr. Oliver told us he would teach us trekking. Taking a half-hour head start, he walked into the forest, leaving a trail of broken twigs, pine cones, and chestnuts behind him. We were to follow the trail until we found him. Unfortunately, we were not very good trackers. We did follow Mr. Oliver's trail some way into the forest, but then we were distracted by a pool of clear water. So, actually, Mr. Oliver wanted to teach them trekking. So, they left a trail of broken twigs, pine cones, and chestnut behind him. And all the students, 20 boys, had to follow them. But none of them were good trackers. And they actually followed to some extent, but soon they found a pool of clear water and they got distracted. Next, the Bond says, "We jumped in and romped about, enjoying the sunshine. Hours later, feeling hungry, we returned to our campsite and prepared the evening meal. It was Bond Bhujia again, but with a very few variations. After some time, when they felt hungry, they came back to their camp and they started preparing for dinner. And again they tried to make the same Bond Bhujia. But this time, they made a bit change. It was growing dark and we were beginning to worry about Mr. Oliver's whereabouts when he limped into the camp. He had waited for us at the far end of the forest for a couple of hours, then decided to return but got lost in the gathering gloom. Village folk finally helped him back to the camp. He was very angry and made us return all our badges, including my cookery badge. Mr. Oliver got very angry because he was waiting for these boys, but these boys started playing in the pool of clear water. And when they got tired, when they started feeling hungry, they returned their camp. And Mr. Oliver kept waiting there. But suddenly it got dark and he also lost the way. Finally, the village people helped him and he could return to his camp. But he was very angry and he ordered everyone to return their badges, including the cookery badge of Ruskin Bond. Bond further says, "An hour later, when we were all preparing to get into our sleeping bags for the night, Mr. Oliver called out, 'Where is dinner?' 'We have had ours,' said one of the boys. 'Everything is finished, sir.' 'Where is Bond?' 'He's the cook, Bond. Get up and make an omelette.' I can't, sir. Why not? You have my badge. Not allowed to cook without it. Scout rule, sir. I've never heard of such a rule, but you can take your badge, all of you. We return to school tomorrow. Why Mr. Oliver was saying in this kind of voice? Because he was very angry, and on the top of that, he was very hungry as well. So, because of his anger and hunger, he shouted on Bond, and he wanted an omelette as a dinner. And as the Bond said that without the badge he could not cook because that was the scout role, then his scout master, Mr. Oliver, returned his cookery badge. And he also said that we are going to return to school tomorrow, means next day. Then Mr. Oliver returned to his tent in a huff. In a huff means angrily. But I relented and made him a grand omelette, garnishing it with dandelion leaves and a chili. Never had such an omelette before, Mr. Oliver said after eating that. Actually, he became happy and satisfied because finally he had an omelette which was quite tasty, and it was made by Bond. Would you like another, sir? Bond asked. Tomorrow, Bond, tomorrow. We'll breakfast early tomorrow, but we had to break up our camp in the early hours of the next morning. And this is what the plan of Mr. Oliver was, that tomorrow they had to go from there in the early hours of morning, and that was the plan. Everything was fine till now, but a very interesting and amusing thing was yet to happen. Can you guess what was that? In the night, a very interesting thing and very amusing thing happened that night. Now let's see what happened that night. A bear had wandered into our camp, Bond says, entered the tent where our stores were kept and created havoc with all our provisions, even rolling our biggest dikchi down the hillside. Since it was a hilly area, it was a forest, so a bear came there wandering, and that bear entered into their camp, and it created lots of havoc, lots of disturbances and destructions. In the confusion and uproar that followed, suddenly, and this is quite natural, that boys would have made lots of shouting and making noise. So in the confusion and uproar that followed, the bear entered Mr. Oliver's tent. Our scout master was already outside, luckily, and came out entangled in his dressing gown. This was quite funny, that the bear was in the dressing gown of Mr. Oliver. It then made off towards the forest, a comical sight in its borrowed clothes. And in those dressing gowns itself, the bear ran towards the forest. This was really a comical sight, a very amusing sight for the children. All were very happy and they started laughing. They felt relieved, but it was really a very laughable sign. And though we were a troop of brave little scouts, we thought it better to let the bear keep its gown. Means a bear in the dressing gown, and not of that of child, and that was also of the scout master, who was very angry just few minutes ago. So all the children had a fun because of that bear that night. However, they felt relieved because finally that bear got disappeared in the forest. So because of that bear, it created a very interesting scene there, and the whole night all the children were a bit scared, but they all were talking to each other about that comical sight, the bear in the dressing gown. Have you ever heard or seen any bear or any animal in a dressing gown of human being? No, you must not have heard or you must not have seen, but that night it happened. So all the children became very excited, became very happy, and finally that bear disappeared in the forest, but in the nightgowns of Mr. Oliver, the scout master of the children. So, this way you find that this is an experience of Mr. Ruskin Bond of his childhood, and how beautifully he presents the story, and how interesting and how amazing the story is. I hope you must have liked the story, you must have understood the story completely, and I'm sure now you can answer any kind of questions related to this story. Thank you. Now, after this beautiful story, I want to tell you about a beautiful poem, that is On the Bridge. Have you ever stood over the bridge? I'm sure most of you must have experienced of standing over the bridge. Then what do you do by standing over the bridge? What do you expect from the water? I'm sure you must be looking into the water, the things which are swimming in the water, the things which are in the surroundings of the bridge. The same situation has been presented quite nicely by the poet Kate Greenway. She has presented a beautiful wishes, the longings of a simple person who is standing over the bridge. But before starting the poem, let's see something about the poet. The poet Kate Greenway was an English children's book illustrator and writer. She was among the three most influential children's writers of her times. In this poem, the speaker and a companion are standing on a bridge and watching things around them. As they stand there, they wish to see many things: a fish, a spider, a flower pot. The poem presents these simple things in a manner that brings great delight. As you all know that poetry is all about delight, and whenever you read a poetry you feel happy, you enjoy, and the same has been presented by the poet Kate Greenway here, who is standing with her companion on a bridge. The poet wants to see many things, and her friend also. You must have experienced the similar kind of things, standing over a bridge, and whenever you are standing on a bridge and you look into a water, you want to see many things in the water, like fish and flower boat and many other things, and which are quite interesting. These things are quite simple, but these are quite interesting and very attractive. The same is the case with the poet and her companion. She is talking to her companion, and the feelings has been presented here in the form of poetry, a beautiful poetry by Kate Greenway. Here the poet shares her wish, what she wants to see in the water. If I could see a little fish, that is what I just now wish. I want to see his great round eyes, always open in surprise. Here the poet wants to say that she wants to see a beautiful fish whose round eyes are always open in surprise. However, it is not in surprise, but it seems that the fishes are always in surprise. And it looks quite amusing, it looks quite interesting for the poet, looking a fish in the water and its round open eyes. But the poet does not finish here. She wants to see something more. She says that, I wish a water rat would glide slowly to the other side, or a dancing spider sit on the yellow flags a bit. Look at it once again. I wish a water rat would glide slowly to the other side, or a dancing spider sit on the yellow flags a bit. Here the poet wishes to see a water rat who could move smoothly and quietly to the other side of the river. And if she is unable to see that water rat, then at least she wants to see a dancing spider who could sit on the yellow flags a bit. Means she wishes that there should be a spider who could sit on the yellow flags for some time, at least for few moments. This is her wish, and for which she is standing on the bridge. She wishes to see rats, she wishes to see spider, and prior to this she wishes to see fish. But not only this much, the poet has some other wishes as well. She says, I think I'll get some stones to throw and watch the pretty circles show. Have you ever thrown stones in water? I'm sure you must have. And when you throw stones in water, then you must have seen the pretty circles. The same thing the poet also wants to see in water. She also wishes, or shall we sail a flower boat and watch it slowly, slowly float? It's quite very attracting and loving to see a flower boat sailing very slowly, slowly and floating in the water. Actually, the poet Kate Greenway, she is a nature loving person, and when you see these things in the nature, then you get immense happiness, and this happiness, this pleasure cannot be compared with any other thing, because this is amazing, this is wonderful. And that is why, just to feel such kind of things, such kind of happiness, the poet desires to see some of the things. That's nice. Let's see the last stanza. That's nice because you never know how far away it means to go, and when tomorrow comes, you see, it may be in the great wide sea. Here the poet wants to say that flower boat will slowly and slowly move to the sea, and how far it will go nobody knows, but it is expected that it will go to a wide sea. As we all know that all the rivers meet either in a big river or it goes into a sea. So the same thing the poet expects and wishes, that this particular river will also merge into the sea, and the flower boat will also go slowly and slowly with the water of the river to the sea. This is quite interesting because the poet wishes all the things which can give her happiness, which are very small things, because naturally when you stand on a bridge, then you wish to find these things. So the poet also wishes these things, and these are the things which make us happy, and this happiness cannot be compared with anything else. So the poet also tells the same thing to her companion. As you can see in the picture, the poet is speaking the same thing but in the poetic form. If you have not got any experience as such, then next time when you go over a bridge, then try to see in the water, and the things which you will see in the water, think about that. And I'm sure you must be pondering, you must have deep thinking about that, and it must have given you immense pleasure. So, with this poem, the poet expresses her wish to see things in water, and she wants to feel the pleasure of nature. I hope you must have enjoyed this poem of Kate Greenway. You must have also understood the poem completely. Thank you very much for your precious time. That's it for now. Have a wonderful learning ahead.